At the end of your life, what will be your legacy? What will you leave behind for future generations? For the world, join the World Messenger, Izabela Lundberg, each week as she brings you a new distinguished guest from the business, sports, or entertainment world to share their success, their struggles, and their lessons. They will share their insights into current hot topics that affect everyone. Izabela facilitates an intimate, vulnerable environment to find the true value of humanity and real leadership. Are you ready for your legacy? The legacy that matters?
Hello, my beautiful friends. It's Izabela Lundberg, the World Messenger, and I'm inviting you for another episode of Legacy Leader Show. This will be epic because my guest has so much wisdom and opportunity for everyone to learn from. He's not only author of Stealing for Time, My Life as FBI Hostage Negotiator. He's one of the most known hostage negotiators and with trajectory of career of 30 years with FBI and 10 years in that amazing role. But he has some amazing stories to tell, and obviously author of a phenomenal book, speaker, consultant, and so much more. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Gary Noesner. Gary, how are you?
Hi, Izabela. It's a pleasure to be with you today and to have a nice conversation.
Likewise, it's just always nice to have guests that bring to the table so much wisdom and experience in a world that is ever so changing and operating, unfortunately, seems like quite a bit on crisis and reactive responses. What are your thoughts?
I think life in general is all about cooperation between human beings, and whether we're talking between relationship and family or challenges at work or internationally. Everything's about people trying to find a path towards a cooperative relationship that works to our mutual benefit. So everybody kind of shares that philosophical goal, but how do we get there? That's more of the challenge. And you mentioned I'd been doing this for 10 years. I was a negotiator for 23 years of my 30 years in the FBI, and I was the chief negotiator for the last 10. But what I learned through now over 40 some odd years of being involved in the negotiation business, that the techniques and the things that I learned in dealing with people in crisis were highly successful in life and death events. So why wouldn't they be even more effective in human interactions that can be challenging, but maybe not quite at that level of stakes? So, and it is a lot of things I've learned about how to communicate with people, how to listen and understand and create a relationship. To me, it's the pathway to essentially every successful outcome.
I love that perspective. But before we go into depth of what that looks like, as we know, I was actually recently doing analysis and statistics and seeing how much actual communication and conversation is missing in every aspects of business or to the level that needs to happen so that it's clear, that it's understood, and that connects with others. Obviously, being master connector and be able to connect with others, I'm sure it's a crucial element in negotiation. But how did you get into, first of all, to work for FBI? And how was your path forward with all these amazing accomplishments you did over a tenure of 30 some years?
Well, I wanted to be in the FBI since I was probably 8 years old or something like that. And, I saw a television show about the FBI and it instantly appealed to me as, an exciting, challenging career. In those days, the FBI was looked at, FBI agents were almost a godlike status. You're chasing bank robbers and arresting spies. And for a young boy, I said, I guess it just couldn't get better than that. So it became my sort of goal, and then through my education and so forth, it actually came true at some point in time. And right after I got into the FBI, there was this new and emerging discipline called hostage negotiations. And it
Mhm.
actually was originated in New York City Police Department. And instead
Wow.
of simply showing up during a crisis and saying, surrender or we're going to come in and kill you, they developed an approach where we slow things down a little bit, stabilize the situation, de-escalate to the extent you can, and open up a dialogue and use effective communication skills to resolve conflict. And that just appealed to me a great deal. So I got the training to become a negotiator fairly early in my career, and it obviously it took hold for me. Initially, there was only just two or three negotiators full time in the FBI, and there were 300 part time. So you might be working organized crime or white collar crime or healthcare fraud or whatever as your day job. But if there was a crisis, you would become a negotiator. For me, I worked terrorism cases and overseas hijackings and kidnappings. So that was pretty interesting in and of itself, as you might imagine.
Wow.
But then when I'm back in the States and I'm working, I'm also responding to hostage and barricade situations that the FBI worked, or I was assisting the police. And eventually I was asked to be one of the two full-time people that ran the program. And then the last 10 years of my career, I was the chief of all of it. But, you know, it was, so it happened, Izabela, more through serendipity than through calculated career planning. But it
Yeah.
worked for me, and I really felt as though, and I learned a lot along the way. I was certainly a far better communicator at the end of my career than at the beginning of my career. But you know, it's all about becoming a good listener. When the New York City Police Department started their program, it was really focused on bargaining. You know, okay,
Mhm.
you're in a bank, you've got two hostages, and you want a getaway car, and while you're waiting for the getaway car, you want some food. And you know, okay, I can send you in some food, but you're going to have to let one of those hostages go. It was just a, you know, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. And we didn't give anybody anything unless we got something in return. So pretty strictly a bargaining focused arrangement. When
Yeah.
I took over the program in 1990, I felt as though what police were really doing was more crisis intervention, suicides, domestic where the guy's having an argument with his wife, or workplace violence where the employee comes back in and he's angry because he's been terminated by his, as he sees it, his unfair, unappreciative boss. In those situations, you don't come in and say, you know, I'll give you a hamburger if you let your wife go. I mean, that's not what it's about. It's a different
Yes.
dynamic. So
Yes.
what we did was we borrowed from the mental health community, from the counseling community, and took on the Carl Rogers approach of active listening. And it really had a dramatically a positive impact on negotiations to some extent today, but particularly more so back in those days. The FBI basically taught everybody in the world this approach, local police, international police, and it's pretty much been adopted universally. And the set of skills that we teach, it's all about, you know, a restatement of contact and a reflection of feelings, labeling the emotions we hear, asking open-ended questions, being empathic, non-aggressive. You know, those are things that help us achieve uh, a level of influence over someone, and convincing them that it is a better course for them not to harm their victim or their hostage, not to harm themselves. And, you know, those skill sets, you know, I found translate much more broadly in life and work. You know, how we talk to our employer, how do we talk to a coworker, how do we communicate with a neighbor with whom we're having a conflict over the fence that runs between our house, whatever it might be. And it all boils down to giving people an opportunity to be understood and appreciated. And we do that through listening. And the reason they're called active listening skills is they're not passive. You know, passive listening, you're just sitting there nodding your head or whatever, and that's all well and good. But if you
Mhm.
really want to be effective, if I really want to convince you that I understand how you feel about something and the issue or problem or concern that you're dealing with, then I have to show that. I have to demonstrate that by paraphrasing in my own words. Okay, now let me make sure I understood what you've just told me. You've told me that you were forced to leave your country at a young age, and you lost family members to a terrible crisis, and then you relocated to a different country. Whatever it might be, you may for the first time be the person that's really listening to people who feel they're not listened to or understood
Yes.
or respected. It's the cheapest concession we can make. Now, I'm giving you nothing other than my time and my understanding, and I'm proving that I understand you by using my words to tell me what you told me. The beauty of it is, if I get a little bit wrong, you'll clarify it for me, and now I know even more. I have an even more accurate sense of what you're going through. But there's two parts of that. It's not just what happened to you, but how did it impact on you? How do you feel about it? How did it change you as a person? And if I can tap into that in my communications, I've hit a home run, as we say, or scored a
Yes.
touchdown, or whatever metaphor you want to use. And Stephen Covey, the business guru, says, first seek to understand and then to be understood. And it's really powerful, something we've known for a long, long time, because if I invest the time and energy and effort into understanding you and your story and what you've been through and how it's affected you, then eventually I'll get an opportunity in our non-crisis conversation where you will make some inquiries about me, and I'll have a chance to share with you how I feel about something. That's how relationships are built. It's a give and a take.
Yes.
But too often in the business negotiation world, we're in a rush to get right down to the business and get you to sign on the dotted line, buy the number of widgets we want to sell, whatever it is. And in reality, we have to slow things down and invest the time to create the relationship. I mean, it sounds silly, but it's one of the reasons that corporate people go out and play golf together, because we have an opportunity on the golf course, or, whatever activity you do, to form a relationship of, I really like this person. They're kind of fun to be with. And I think they're interesting, have an interesting background. And that leads to a commitment where people want to do business with you. And, you could say that's manipulation. It's really not if it's done genuinely and sincerely.
Absolutely.
We've even had it where we've had hostage takers kind of know what we're doing. And they'll say, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to listen to what I have to say, and so that you can influence what I do. Absolutely. Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I want to understand what you're going through today, what problems and concerns that you have, because I want to try to be able to help you. It's beautiful if you think about it that way. We don't have to pretend like this is some secret mission. Yes, that's exactly what. I don't want to see you get hurt. I don't want to see anybody else get hurt. And for me to help you, I need to understand a little bit more about what you're going through and why you're responding to the facts and circumstances this way. So maybe we can work together to find a solution. So it's pretty simple stuff, and sometimes it doesn't seem complex enough for some people. They want the recipe. Give me the
Yes.
no, I want the cookbook that's going to give me the 15 steps I have to take, and I want to take them in order to get what I want. When I was in the FBI, I created a model called the behavioral change stairway model. And it's universally used in the negotiation business now. And I always teach it from the top step, which is essentially cooperation, which is our goal. In law enforcement, we've got a crisis, people's lives are in line. We want cooperation. Cooperation to not hurt anybody, cooperation to surrender peacefully, cooperation so we don't have to go in and endanger the lives of one of our police officers. So to get that cooperation, I've got to be able to exert some level of influence. That's the next step down. The next step below influence is to create some sort of rapport between you and the other person. And how do you get that rapport? You get that rapport through the demonstration of empathy, understanding, not sympathy. I feel sorry for you. Empathy. I understand what you're going through. And that comes from active listening skills. So I created this stairway model as a way to illustrate the process But even police negotiators, I had them say, I'm stuck on that third step and I don't know how to get to that fourth step. I said, you're missing the point. You know, there's no clear cut, do this, and then you do that, and then you do that. I said, it all works together. I'm just trying to illustrate that you have to earn the right to be of influence to somebody. It just doesn't come because of your rank, your title, your position, whatever it is. You know, you have to earn the right. And you have to earn the right by showing I'm a good, decent, caring person. And this is very important in my former life because it's not what people expect from a police officer or an FBI agent. They expect us to be very officious, very authoritative. You will do this, you're going to do that. I've got the power over you. And instead they say, hey, Izabela, this is Gary. I know you're going through a tough time in there. How can I help you? You know, I really want to help. That's not what you expect. And particularly with individuals that have a negative history with law enforcement, certainly not what they expect. So we present something that throws them off a little bit, but in a good way. And they said, well, this person, finally, somebody wants to hear my point of view. You know, I'm holding this guy and I'm going to kill him because he fired me and he's a son of a bitch boss, you know, and you say it sounds like you're really angry at your boss for the way you feel he's treated you. I'm not saying kill your boss. I'm saying I understand how you feel. I understand that you feel unappreciated and that the work that you did was not recognized and you feel you've been treated unfairly. Is that right? Yeah. If I get that wrong, they'll probably say, well, no, I don't think I was treated unfairly. I just didn't get the recognition I wanted. Okay, well, now I've kind of fine-tuned this point that's going to help me in my next question or inquiry. You know, so it's the recognition piece that's important. You know, so that's what a negotiator and a negotiation team do. We keep our ears attuned to these verbal clues that help us understand the motivation that's driving behavior. And then we ultimately try to get the person to think beyond the tunnel vision. You know, when you're in a crisis, there's only one solution. I have to do this. And you're not thinking clearly. And so what we try to do is expand. Now, wait a minute, there are some other things you could do. You know, have you thought about perhaps taking some legal action against your boss if you feel like you were wrongfully terminated, you know, and, you know, killing your boss isn't going to get your job back. And it's, you know, so forth and so on. But we can't start off that way. You know, we can't show up and say, sir, you know, I've done this many, many times. We're going to talk for 2 hours or 3 hours. And eventually you're going to change your mind and surrender peacefully. So instead of wasting 2 or 3 hours, why don't we just do it now and get it over with? Well, they're not ready. You haven't earned the right yet. They haven't had an opportunity to share their feelings, concerns. So, you know, all things in their time. The name of my book is Stalling for Time. It's not that we purposely elongate the situation, but what we learned is if we slow things down and de-escalate, we have an opportunity to create that relationship, to listen, to understand, to devote our time and energies towards trying to treat this person with dignity and respect and helping them find a way out. It's kind of simple, you know, obviously, but people don't think of it that way. And I should let you ask a question. I've been babbling on a bit.
No, I love what you're sharing, how you connecting the dots and giving the bigger overview and a picture for everyone to understand that are watching and listening, Gary, because you're right. People always think the solutions are most complex and they want a silver bullet, also shortcuts, right? But they don't realize that are in the simplicity, but yet, even though they look simple and easy, they're not. They require so many elements that so many miss the cues. And they're not willing to self-train. They're not willing to put that extra work. So with that in mind, I'm curious, Gary, obviously you saw opportunity. You saw opportunity in the 90s to develop and show different models. And as they say, rest is history, right? And influence how things are done internally in the United States and then also obviously on international level. What are some of the biggest lessons that you learn during some of the hostage negotiation dire situations. That really can help, because right now, as I mentioned earlier, either we like it or not, a lot of people are responding in crisis mode versus preventative and proactive way. And maybe this can also help them to put some things in perspective.
I think the biggest thing, which is also the most important attribute of a successful negotiator, is self-control. I mean, when you go into a challenging situation, a challenging discussion, the bottom line is that you really can't control the other person. You can try to influence them, but control you don't have. What can you control? You can control yourself and how you respond, how you react, how you demonstrate your gestures, your voice level, so forth and so on. So if you can learn, and some people are quite naturally good at this and others are really bad at it, but most of us can work on these skills, just maintain your self-control. It does have an impact on others. It subconsciously influences others. If you're all angry and mad at me and I'm seemingly unfazed by that, and I say, okay, Izabela, I understand, I can hear you're angry and so forth, I'm acknowledging you, but I'm not saying, oh yeah, well, what about you? You shouldn't be doing this. And that only ratchets up the interaction. So control yourself is really the number one thing. Slow down, take your time, be patient, leverage a team. If you're working in that context, don't be afraid to take a time out or a break and say, we've talked about a lot of issues here for the last couple hours. Got a lot to think about myself, and I'd like to sit and meet with my team and see if we can come up with some other ways to approach dealing with this issue. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not like I got to get him to sign on the dotted line before I leave the room. But if we do all these things, I'll be the first to tell you, there's no guarantee that you will make the sale or obtain the agreement if you do all these things I've talked about. However, if you do make the agreement, it's probably because of these things. You see the difference is, I mean, it's the old saying, you can fool some of the people all the time. You can hoodwink some client occasionally and screw people over on a business deal. But for most people, if you are consistent and you treat people well, they will be drawn to you. And in fact, there is times where they're making their decisions solely on an economic number. I'm sorry, Izabela, your price point is just simply beyond what we can pay. And you say, oh, I'm just very unfortunate. I feel like we're giving you the best price we possibly can. But, I understand you're going to move in a different direction, and that's fine. I only hope that if things don't work out with your new vendor, that you would at least consider giving us an opportunity to work with you again. Don't burn a bridge. Don't be angry. Don't be insulting. Leave it open. And typically what I found is those clients that are cheap and base their opinions solely on a number are often disappointed with what they ultimately get.
Yes.
They get the low bidder, the low quality, the low performing entity because they've been sold a bill of goods. So when they drop that, they're going to say, you know what, this isn't working out. Let's go back to Izabela because, she was straight up with us and she was right. We didn't get what we were really looking for with going this other direction. And you haven't burned a bridge, so I think those are important things to remember. And, I identified a bunch of qualities that make a successful negotiator. And, there may be a little different than what people think. I think it's genuineness, sincerity, trustworthiness, honesty, integrity. And you know what the number one is in my very informal research, the number one quality of a successful negotiator? Likability, plain old likability, just being a likable person. Well, you say, well, of course. Well, really? If it was, it's so powerful. People want to work with people they like, plain and simple. Now, what makes somebody like somebody else? That's a whole different discussion. What are the qualities that someone else finds likable and somebody else finds objectionable? And you have to be open-minded. I recently met someone new socially here, and I didn't like this guy at all at first. I just thought, this is not my kind of person. But after 2 or 3 more interactions, I really like him now. I gave it the opportunity. I didn't make a rash decision and shut the door on the relationship. And then I found, there were some things I didn't appreciate or I misinterpreted. And now I think this is a really fun, interesting person, but you got to get used to their sense of humor. Well, I think we kind of need to treat our clients that way too. Don't rush to a conclusion that we can't work with these people. Persist, try again, and if it doesn't work now, maybe it'll work later. I used to go to hostage situations to help the police. And there was a big prison riot I went to, and right after Waco, and they'd been doing it for a couple of days. And when I got there to help them, and I made a suggestion, we should think about, or you may want to think about doing the following. And they said, well, we did that 3 days ago, and it didn't work. And what I said was, well, that was 3 days ago.
Wow.
Haven't things changed? You don't think anything's changed in 3 days? There's all kinds of fatigue issues, there's frustration issues, there's this or that. This is not the same place that it was 3 days ago.
Yes.
Just because it didn't work before doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad idea. It just means that they weren't ready or receptive to that idea back then, but they may be later on. I worked 3 or 4 prison riots where what the inmates accepted on day 6, 7, 8 is exactly what was offered on day 1.
Wow.
But they weren't ready for it psychologically. Now we're in charge of the prison. We're going to tear the place apart. We're going to show the authorities, we don't like the way they were treating us. We're going to do all the things we want. Nobody's going to tell us when we have to go to sleep and, so forth and so on. But after a couple of days, prisoners are like any other human beings. They're creatures of habit. They want to get back into the routine. So the ideas and suggestions that you offer on day 3 or 4 now all of a sudden become more palatable than they did on day 1. And ultimately they'll agree to on day 7 or 8. So I always tell people, just don't have this waste bin next to you where you say, oh, we tried that 4 days ago, throw it away, don't ever bring it up again. Well, not so much. So that's just a little tangent.
That is fantastic, actually, a reminder, because you're spot on. A lot of times we are quick to dismiss and or not even try again, but try it from different angle and position differently and ask more questions and probe. And when conditions and environment changes, obviously opportunities changes as well. And ultimately, what is the goal and what's possible, right? If we don't allow ourselves to go there, we'll never know.
Yeah, absolutely right. And the other thing we tend to do is dismiss things that we don't think are important.
Yes.
Yeah, well, you don't really want that. Well, if they keep bringing it up, you better listen to it, because it may seem like a trivial thing to you, but it's important to them. Way back in the 70s in Washington, D.C., they had a hostage situation with a group of Hanafi Muslims, and they were holding officials hostage. And one of the things that and I'm give you the real short version, the head terrorist, for lack of a better term, wanted a whole bunch of parking tickets taken care of, 20, 30 parking tickets he'd gotten. And they just kept dismissing it because, wait, this is a big hostage situation. There's people's lives on the line. And you keep talking about these stupid parking tickets. I mean, who gives a damn? But he kept bringing it up. And, after a while, it finally dawned on them, this is an important issue for him. It may seem trivial to us, irrelevant to us, immaterial to us, but if he keeps bringing it up, it's important to him and we need to address it. So they say, yeah, okay, we'll take care of the parking tickets, we can do that. So you have to have your ear tuned to those sorts of things, the things that you or I might find critically important may not be so much for someone else. And conversely, they may feel strongly about an issue that we think is completely trivial and unimportant. That's why it's important to be a good listener, to understand what are the things that are driving their behavior.
How true is that? And I love what you said, because we see a lot of those issues here in a working environment, don't we? And a lot of organizations don't pay attention so much on their talent, what talent it's in, and where the friction is. And sometimes just addressing something simple and showing good faith or interest or desire to compromise or find alternative and offer something that will not necessarily cost more, but just gives more flexibility. And if we are open to hearing and exploring and finding mutually beneficial options, I feel like a lot of things will be much better. And we're a lot of times stuck in the old way of thinking. So speaking of that, what would you say there were some most beneficial things that were, or role models or mentors for you, the most beneficials during your career path, and how do you continue learning and engaging and progressing and creating this not only phenomenal legacy for yourself in active duty, but also how you shaped and reshaped FBI Department for Negotiation?
Well, I think I've had a lot of mentors along the way, and hopefully I've learned from them. In fact, I've often said that probably if I have a really great skill, it's picking a good mentor. It started early in my FBI career. I said, who are the agents working on the squad that I'm assigned that are the most successful, productive, well-regarded, that's who I want to be like. That's who I want to learn from. And I think what I found, and certainly I practiced it later in the other direction, when you as a young person eager to learn, go to such a mentor, that's someone that's been in your profession for quite a long time, almost universally, they will feel honored to help you. They want to pass on things that they've learned and skills and abilities. And they will generally take the time. It's not universal, but in most cases, I think people will say, this is a young, eager person starting off their career. They want to be the best they can. They seem to want to work hard and put in the time and the energy to be successful. I want to help them if I can. And boy, then you've really opened up great opportunities for yourself, because, now I've got not only whatever I've learned in the academic context, but now I've got this skilled practitioner,
Yes.
that's telling me what to do. I mean, and the FBI, we have an FBI academy, and they teach you all the things you need to know, but it's really only a small part of the job. You really have to learn while doing. So for me, I realized quickly that, hey, I'm going to find the person that does this better than anybody else, and I'm going to follow them and learn from them and listen to what they have to say. Doesn't mean you do everything that they do, because personalities are different.
Yes.
But I think that's important. So I had a lot of mentors along the way, and I think we were all wise. People today tell me, I said, well, what about all these people teaching negotiations? Do you feel any competition? I said, absolutely not. I said, if you're wanting to become a negotiator, whether it's in the law enforcement context or the business, get training from everywhere you can, every time you can, from everyone you can. Then it's a smorgasbord. I like this, what Izabela says. I like this that Gary says. I don't like so much what that person says, but he's got some good information on this. Pick and choose the things that fit your personality, that you feel comfortable incorporating into your repertoire, and I think that's the way to be, because almost everybody has something valuable to share. And a lot of times in my old business, it's not so much that you had this new concept, but how do you explain it? For years when I speak, I'm a storyteller. And to me, that's how people learn, and I think that's, I did one for you earlier. I talked about the guy and his speeding and his parking tickets.
Yes.
You'll remember that story. You don't know the whole story. You don't know all the details, but you'll remember that little vignette, because,
Yes.
well, that makes sense. Now here's this big life and death stuff going on, and there's this obscure point that this guy was focused on, and we didn't pay attention to it at first. Well, there's a lesson there, and you remember it in that context. So I mean, that's, again, I'm rambling and getting far afield, Isabel, but that's how kind of look at things. Learn from everywhere you can, and be the best that you can be.
That's fantastic advice, and to shows also what attributed beside your desire to continue to learn, because a lot of leaders, when they get specifically in such a visible, prominent roles to lead a department and to shape direction, stop learning, and that is troubling and sometimes alarming. And then the ones that continue learning and learning even from their employees and everyone, as you mentioned, and perfecting and improving and making things better, continue to consistently project trajectory of success.
Yeah, I've been teaching negotiations now for 42 years.
Oh my goodness.
And it's pretty rare.
Congratulations.
It's pretty rare where somebody comes up with a question I haven't heard before.
Yes.
But occasionally they do. Sometimes I have an answer. Well, nobody's asked me that, but here's my thoughts on it. But I also do something else every once in a while. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's okay. I don't have to be the guru that has every single answer. That's a tough one. I'm not sure what I would do. I think it would depend on some other circumstances. And then I do this. What would you do? How do you think you would handle it?
Yeah.
Gives me a chance to maybe learn from this person in the audience. And because it's like riding a bicycle. I have 3 adult children now and 7 grandkids. And when I taught my 3 kids to ride a bicycle, they all learned at a different level. Some real quick, the others took much, much longer, a lot of falls and scraped knees and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, they all knew how to ride a bike, one as well as the other. So what's the principle is, it's not the speed with which you learn the skill, it's how well do you learn it. And ultimately they all learned the same skill at their own pace, in their own time, with help. And I think that's important. I always used to tell a story that when I ran the FBI crisis negotiation course at the FBI Academy, there was a brand new FBI agent coming through the training to become a negotiator. And I heard him do a role play very early in the training. And I walked to him, I said, "You're the best negotiator I've ever heard in my life." He kind of, "What?" And I said, "You're the best negotiator I've ever heard." I said, you are so natural. You're so empathic. You have the right voice. You come across, you will be successful, even if you don't go through the rest of this training. He was like in day 2 of a 2-week course.
Wow.
And he was that good. And, and I was envious. I said, you are doing naturally what's taken me years to do. That's fine. Recognize that. It's not a contest. It's it's something to be valued and recognized and praised, and it's this carried over later in my career, because when I would be at a situation like a Waco, I would make sure that in between phone calls with David Koresh or whoever we were talking to, that everyone on the team had an opportunity to make comments about what they heard, what they thought, what their opinions were, what their recommendations, what's their evaluation. And I think a good leader, and I know your focus very much on leadership,
Yes.
provides that opportunity. I knew at my very senior level back then, if I sat down at the table and said, "Here's how I see it, here's what we're going to do," then everybody shuts up. The boss has said what we're doing, and we're going to do it. So you have to work real hard, even though you may know clearly in your mind the pathway that you're probably going to take. You've got to slow down and take the time to ask everybody in the team, "What did you think? What did you hear? Do you have any great ideas?" And if somebody else comes up with an idea that you were already going to say, "Hey, that's a great idea. Good for you." That's a very helpful way of looking at that. I think we need to give that strong consideration. I mean, give your team a sense that they're listened to and they're appreciated, and their opinions, thoughts have value. It just seems the right way for me.
I love your attitude, and I hope that everybody watching and listening again, it's taking a lot of notes and also listening again if needed to, because you're right, we don't praise enough, and we always feel like it's a competition, or how is this going to reflect on me? And really brings the perspective of insecurities. And in reality, we need more great talent, and we need to recognize what they're good at it. If we don't tell them, how they will know what they stand out, whether it's the best qualities or what we want them to do more of, right? And I
Yeah.
think it's a tremendous opportunity to change minds and how we lead. Honestly, to tell you the truth, Gary, I would love to be the FBI agent when I was younger, but it didn't work out. And and I have to say, I was like, okay, but if that didn't work out, let me play in a leadership side. Because looking back, and when you mentioned how you started with agencies, with the agency, I'm sorry, and specifically build your career. It's never too late to apply some principle and what excites us ultimately of helping people, right?
Yeah.
Making things better. And just having that commitment clear and known and exude that every day. I'm sure you mentored plethora of phenomenal agents that are still working, and as a result of your leadership, thriving today. And that's what really we need more of, don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, I've been retired from the FBI for 20 years. I'd like to think, that some of the things that I developed or helped develop or helped spread are continuing to be factors in the work that people do towards saving lives.
Mm,
And that those people in turn share those stories with the people that come after them. We all step on the shoulders of the people that came before us, and that's just simply the right way, and that's how we want it to be. But I think teams are really important, and I think you have to find a way to encourage and mentor the people that work for you.
yeah.
And please don't get the idea that I never made mistakes in leadership. I'm sure I made plenty, but I know when I managed people in my unit, I had 10 or 12 agents, supervisors working for me and support employees. When one of them would come in with an issue, I had to learn to close the door, put my phones on hold, tell my secretary no calls, come out from behind my desk and sit next to him. And it always happened at a terrible time. It was always when I'm terribly busy, but you had to force yourself to take the time to give this person your full and undivided attention and listen to what they had to say. And a really funny thing happened. I realized that very rarely did I have to make a decision or solve a problem, because most people weren't there looking for a solution. They were looking for me to hear what they had to say about something. And
Wonderful.
that took me a while to understand that. They're
Mhm.
not looking for me to solve a problem. And of course, men and women go through this all the time, relationships,
Yes.
where particularly men, I think, I'm certainly guilty of it, are more focused towards quickly moving to problem solving. So when your spouse, and I don't want to get too gender specific here, comes to you with some issues, problems with their work or family issues or whatever, they're not looking for you necessarily to solve the problems. Okay, this is what you tell them, here's what you do. They just want you to listen and understand how they feel. And I think that's important when we're dealing with our subordinates. It's important when we're dealing with our clients. I mean, for example, if you're dealing with a client and the client has a problem, and there's always problems, on the deliverables that you promised, and they're coming back to you because you're the sales representative, and say, okay, say no more. We're going to fix it. We're going to fix it. Give them the time to listen to what they're saying, so you fully understand the problems that this issue is causing them. Maybe it's making them look bad in the eyes of their boss,
Yeah.
and it's going to allow you to formulate a better plan. Just don't be in a rush. Slow down, acknowledge your point of view. I hear what you're saying. It sounds like we really did not fulfill the expectations that you had on this order. Is that right? Do I understand that correctly? Yeah, yeah, that's what I want to say to you, and because of this, we put you in a bind with your boss, who's now been taking it out on you, and may affect your bonus and your career aspirations. And it sounds like that's really bothering you and has upset you. Yes, you understand. So it's really simple stuff, Isabel. I mean, I kind of laugh. I think people tend to try to make things too complicated sometimes. Maybe it's because I'm a simple guy and I can't do the complicated, but I don't know. But I think just be a good listener,
I love that. And it's such a great advice for everyone, again, watching and listening, because as many people, they know in different places in their life and professionally and personally, it's also a great opportunity to revisit what we think we're doing right and what we're thinking we're doing wrong. And we have opportunity to improve, finding the great mentor, and also being in an environment where we can be ourselves and where we can truly thrive when somebody feels that they appreciate, want to listen to us and want to give us extra boost to continue to progress and be successful.
Yeah, and that even comes into play. Let's say you're competing for business and you don't get the contract.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with following up with your client. Say, listen, I know you went in a different direction, and I'm not here today to try to get you to change your mind, but I would really appreciate if you could share with me where you think we came up short. What could we have done better to win your business? Because we obviously did not. In other words, you're putting the blame on you, not, why didn't you pick me? Just say, no, we obviously did not live up to the expectations that you set for this contract. And because of that, understandably, we lost the business. But I want us to be better in the future. I want us to be able to serve our clients better. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd really appreciate the input. If you're uncomfortable, that's fine too. But if you don't mind, I'd like to know how did I personally not live up to your expectations? And I'm a big boy. Tell me, I can take it. And I want to know, because I want to be better at this. And I think most people will say, well, now that you mention it, it wasn't so much you, but that other person from your company that you brought, I just didn't like their smirk or their attitude. Well, now you've learned something important, or, when you asked us about this process, you didn't sound to me like you were really interested in how we did it. Well, that's how we learn to improve. I mean,
Yes.
Human beings don't start off and never obtain perfection. We're constantly making hopefully less old mistakes, but we make new ones all the time. And, the way we stop making those same mistakes is we learn from those and try to modify or change our behavior. And that's what we need to do.
Brilliant. So for someone who had this amazing tenure in one of the most prestigious careers as in FBI, for successful on top of that, right? It's just so many people retire, but again, to make the amazing waves and changes and transformation, and also to be chief FBI crisis negotiator and head that unit and lead the teams and future generations of the phenomenal hostage negotiators. Obviously, you carved outstanding legacy for yourself, and of course family and everything else that you accomplished in your professional and personal career. But I'm curious, Gary obviously also wrote the book. For everyone, please go check it out. It's available on Amazon. Stalling the Time, which I want to tell you.
It's called Stalling for Time.
I'm sorry, the stalling the time stalling for the time, because a lot of times we're stalled for the time. And that's exactly some questions I have about that. My life as a hostage negotiator, as the FBI hostage negotiator. So please double check that. It's available on Amazon. I ordered mine and I cannot wait to read it, but I had a chance to check a little bit before we had this conversation. I'm curious, what would you like you led it, you lived it. And what would you like to leave as your legacy? What would be something that you will say, I feel like I really accomplished my mission? What will be that, Gary?
Well, that's interesting. I don't know that anybody's asked me that question, but I mean, I hope I made a difference in my sort of focused field of law enforcement hostage crisis negotiations. I feel that I really led the way to move to a crisis intervention model, and
Yes.
and put that in the FBI curriculum that spread throughout the world, because it wasn't really taught before then. I didn't invent that stuff. I took it from other places, from the counseling field and so forth, but I saw its applicability to what we did. So I mean, I like to think, there's no way of ever knowing the numbers, but through that effort, there are a lot of people alive today, including police officers, because we've resolved situations peacefully without someone having to use deadly force or put their life in jeopardy. Well, I mean, that's more than enough for me. I mean, that feels pretty good legacy, you know. I think for most people, we always think our children and our grandchildren are our most important legacy, but you know, I had to be realistic. My grandkids probably will never fully understand or appreciate the things I did, but that's okay. You know, we all want, in our own little way, to make life a little bit better, to advance the cause, the issue, you know, and I feel I feel that's very important, you know, to try to make the world a better place, and to leave a better place for my children and my grandchildren. And if part of that is making law enforcement, you know, be better at resolving conflict and saving lives, well, you know, that's okay. I can live with that. That's pretty good stuff, actually. So I feel good about that. But it's certainly nothing I did on my own. I mean, there's a lot of people that contributed to where the state of law enforcement negotiations exists today, and I'm just glad to be a part of that.
That's fantastic. And again, I'm sure as time passed by, and obviously maybe another book in the works, but for everyone again watching and listening, could you please tell, because when you negotiate, everything slows down and some people purposely are buying the time. So do you mind sharing a little bit how this book came about, and then also what they can learn, everybody that's watching and listening, what they can learn and have it as a practical application?
Yeah, I mean, I had been retired. I retired from the FBI in 2003 and became a corporate conflict resolution consultant. And I had so many people say to me that I had a very unique and interesting, impactful career, and that I should write a book about it. Well, after all, I began to believe them and say, well, maybe I should, you know. And and so after I had done consulting for 5 years, I spoke to a friend of mine who's a very successful author, and he put me in touch with his literary agent, and she really helped guide me through the process. And she said, "You've had an amazing career. Can you write?" And I said, "I don't know, you know." So she said, write a sample chapter, and next thing you know, several publishing houses wanted the book, and they got into a bidding war. So I was quite fortunate, and writing the book was, you know, was an interesting challenge, you know, because Random House that bought the book wanted 100. They wanted 85,000 words. I gave them 185,000 words. So we had to really. There were so many cases that didn't even get in the book, but they wanted a little bit smaller, tighter book for a particular audience, and so I did that. You know, and then the book was later used for the Waco TV show on the Paramount Channel, where Michael Shannon plays me. They just finished filming the second season, which will be out next year. Netflix has a big documentary coming out on Waco next year that I'll be featured in. So yeah, so it's kind of led to some other projects. You know, you don't really pursue those things in a calculated fashion. They just sort of evolve serendipitously, and you know, one thing leads to another. But you know, I mean, I've had a really charmed life, you know, and my family certainly paid a price, and I travel a lot and work long hours, and you know, face some risks, but not untypical for someone in law enforcement. But you know, it's all kind of special to look back on now, and to see. It's funny, I mentioned to you earlier that behavioral change stairway model. I was at a conference some years ago. Shows how old you get now. Some brand new negotiator walks up to me and he says, "Have you ever heard of that behavioral change stairway model? That's really good stuff." And I said, "Yeah, I'm familiar with it." You know, but,
I
you know,
actually created it.
yeah, I actually wrote it.
I
But it's
wrote-
funny, and then it kind of shows you that the water fills in fast behind you, as one of my colleagues used to say.
That's
You know,
beautiful.
and you say, okay, my time in the spotlight in this little niche is past, and now it's time for other people to shine and be seen, and that's fine. That's the natural order of things. You know, it's just the way it is. And yeah, so it's taken me most of my life to have a good balance of time, health, and financial security, and I'm trying to live it for everything it's worth, you know.
That's fantastic. That's a great attitude. And again, everyone watching and listening here on this episode of Legacy Leadership, this is what it looks like to live and lead your legacy. And of course, then you automatically building your legacy simultaneously and leaving tremendous impact for generations to come. Gary, in conclusion, do you mind sharing how the others can find you
Yeah,
if they
well,
wanted to connect with you?
I have a website, you know, www. Gary Noesner, one word, GaryNoesner.com. And on that, there's, you know, links to podcasts I've done and articles I've written and interviews and, you know, all that sort of thing. Some links to some documentaries I've been involved.
Thank you for listening to Legacy Leader Show. If you enjoyed the content and had a positive experience, then please leave us a positive rating. In addition, leave us a positive review whenever you are listening on whatever platform there might be. Make sure your friends and family also know about the benefit and value that we provide and what we have to offer. Cheers.